Another $256 billion bank just imploded. This is 3 in just 1 week. Yes, friends, it is on the other side of the ocean, unless you are in Australia or if you're watching somewhere in China or something like that. These banks are imploding over in China, but we've already surpassed the power of Lehman Brothers going down. So to say that this is going to have dramatic impacts worldwide is an understatement. This is going out before the market opens here on Monday morning. Just want to get this out to you. Be careful out there. What's probably going to happen is at some point we're going to get this massive bailout from China. China's probably going to bail out all these banks because that's what big governments do. But so there's kind of some expectation of that. If that bailout doesn't happen fast enough, if more banks continue to go down, you could see the markets really start crashing here. Or if we get this bailout and it's more than expected or something like that, we could see markets go up dramatically. Be careful out there. Let's talk about what's going on, not just with markets because that's important, right? But we'll talk about what's happening to the financial economy around the world. People's jobs, businesses, and what's going to happen geopolitically even because of this. This is big news out there. So let's jump into it. Welcome to the Poplar Report. I'm Steve Poplar. I'm an accountant. And so we're going to be going through some of this impact that's going to be hitting everyone's bank accounts. This is going to make the dollar change value. This is going to make your investments change value. This is going to impact whether you have a job or not in the near future. We're already moving into recession, and seeing these banks imploding over in China is not going to be good news. And in fact, the banks over there are invested in by banks in the United States, in the UK, in Australia, and Austria, I guess. All over. European banks are heavily invested in Chinese. Everyone's invested in this giant bubble of fake apartments built in China. Everyone's invested in it. And it's been like this giant bubble like the tulips in the Netherlands way back in the day, right? Just why are they so expensive? Why are we pouring so much money into these apartments that nobody even lives in? And yet the entire world has chased after this. A lot of people's retirement accounts are in these things as well. Pension funds heavily invested in China. So let's talk about it. So as of shooting this video, we haven't seen any more earthquakes over in California, but do keep your ear to the ground. If you're in California, there was an alert, a shake alert that went out to a lot of the folks in the immediate area of the earthquake last evening. We talked about that Sunday morning and talking about how the hurricane can cause earthquakes. A massive force like this. And I know some people are like, well, it's a tropical storm now. It was a hurricane, and oftentimes it's referred like that just because it's a tropical storm where you are, still called hurricane because it was. Anyway, so this is a powerful storm, and it's going to dump a lot of water all over California, and it might just loosen things up with the San Andreas fault. And that is going to be a big deal. So this earthquake Sunday evening happened, or Sunday afternoon, depending on where you are, happened before the rain really started landing on Los Angeles. So this is probably more caused by the swell of the water and the force of the wind. And we're also seeing kind of a whole bunch of smaller quakes happening all up and down the San Andreas fault. So be careful out there. We could be seeing it get loosened up for the big one out there. Anyway, all that to say, we have a lot of things going on. We got the storm damage, lots of rain, flooding towns already, just the outer bands just hitting some places in Arizona, and California. Lots of flooding. There's going to be a lot of destruction, a lot of roads out of commission, bridges taken out, all this kind of stuff like that. Expect that in the very near future. National Guard units have already been called up. There will be a major response from disaster relief as well as National Guard and everything like that. But let's go back over to China, because this people don't realize, but China is the second largest economy in the world. And what they don't realize is also much of the financialization of the United States is these investments in China. Much of the money in retirement accounts, pension accounts, everything like that is money that has been invested in China. And for these investment companies over in China to almost to $1 trillion in default now, they're not paying out on those investments. That means pension funds that were on the edge as it was, like the California Pension Fund, teachers' pension funds, government pension funds all across the United States, could be in serious trouble very, very quickly. And that's not overstating things. And then, in addition to that, we have a lot of banks that have been gambling over in investments over in China. So we could be seeing American banks. Over the weekend, a lot of accountants were staying up all night long and all day long crunching numbers to see if their bank and how much their bank is exposed to some of these collapsing financial giants over in China. This is a big deal. We already have banks on edge here in the United States. Before we had banks in China going down, we had banks in the United States going down, remember? We had, some with crypto issues and all that kind of stuff like that. Some of that crypto stuff just making money just disappear out of thin air, right? That's kind of a big deal, and billions of dollars were lost, and banks started going under. Signature Bank and, of course, Silicon Valley Bank. That was without China having these major issues. Now, with China having these major issues, these banks are being caught with really high inflation, really high interest rates, which you'd think would be good for a bank, but it's actually not, because they're sitting on tons and tons of money that they loaned the U.S. federal government at much lower interest rates, which means the value of those bonds is down dramatically. They can't sell them. If they sell them, they have to admit how much money they lost, and they've lost a lot. We're talking close to $1 trillion in unrecognized losses. If they admit that they've lost that money, they can't borrow money against all these things. And in a lot of cases, this $1 trillion in unrecognized losses means that they have an extra 10, 15, up to $20 trillion borrowed against those assets that don't exist anymore. That's a problem. They have to pay back all these other assets. But the problem is these assets have lost value too, and they don't want to admit that. It's a steamroll. That's what happened to Silicon Valley Bank, was they have so much crud on their balance sheet that's not worth what they say it is, and yet they're still borrowing money against it. I mean, if you bought a brand new car 10 years ago for $40,000, and you're saying that that car is worth $40,000 still, 10 years ago, that thing's probably worth $5,000 to $10,000, maybe. But you're still saying it's $40,000 and you've borrowed $100,000 against that car. Does that make any sense? But that's exactly what banks all over the United States are still doing. And that's what banks over in China have been doing. They have lots and lots of assets. The bank Evergrande, which is the one we're talking about right now, they defaulted on Friday and filed for bankruptcy. This bank has $256 billion in assets, and yet they owe $340 billion in debt. If you're like, that doesn't make sense, you're right, it doesn't. That's not exactly how a bank's supposed to get. How can they owe $340 billion in debt and yet only have $256 billion in assets? Anyone? Sound a little over-leveraged? Do they just kind of misplace $84 billion? That's kind of what they did. In their trading, in their whatever, they ended up $84 billion in the hole. They probably went down to Macau or to the casinos and blew $84 billion, okay? That's where we're at right now. And so the bank it's effectively gone. They're under heavy pressure from the Chinese government not to just walk away, but they already have people and businesses already seizing their assets in China. Those $256 billion worth of assets, well, all the people over in China, they're grabbing those assets as fast as they can. And guess who's going to get caught holding the bag? If you said foreign banks, you're darn tootin' right. That's exactly. Foreign investors, foreign banks are going to get stiffed. This is not just a China problem. This is a world economy problem. And this is probably going to have some serious impacts to American, European, and other nations' banks. This is going to start unfolding, but like good bankers always do, they're going to hide this as long as they can and tell you that everything is fine until suddenly it isn't. And lo and behold, we're moving into September, folks. We are setting ourselves up for another Black Monday, Black Thursday, Black Friday. I don't know what day of the week it's going to happen on, but we're looking like we're going to be getting ready for a massive stock market crash in the very near future. Do you really want to be in the stock market right now? If you don't, you might want to get out of it soon. That's not financial advice. That's me reading the tea leaves and telling you what I'm thinking about all that kind of stuff. If you agree with me, you might want to talk to your financial advisor. If you have retirement funds that you can't pull out of stocks, bonds, we always keep talking about Genesis Gold Group or other gold IRAs or silver IRAs. Get your money over into precious metals. That's wise stuff to do. You won't lose nearly as much. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. And if you're in California, please keep your head down and watch out for yourself. If you're not in California, please be praying for the people in California. They're going to need it in the next 24 hours or so as the storm comes through and the flooding peaks. All right, folks, thanks so much for watching. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report, out.